direct conversation, some deep reactions, please. All this comics narration ain't late me. A little more talk, a lot less read. A little fight, baby, is what I need. Close the trade, open up your brains. Explain it to me. Explain it to me, baby. Explain it to me.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Ret Conversations. My name is Josh Wasta, a.k.a. Fallout Fieri, and with me is my Dr. L, my Professor L, Leia Cameron, my always present. God, what do we even partner in suffering?
Yeah. At this point, I would definitely say suffering is involved.
We did the Clone Saga last week. This week, we're doing Sins Past, which is probably the least well-known of the trifecta, because next week, we're going to tackle One More Day. So, our Spider-Man three-peat. But the brave person that's with us to get the explanation today is a good friend of Graphically Novel, Will Azbill.
Hello.
Welcome. Hey. If you like Will, definitely check out our Swamp Thing episode from Graphically Novel, where he broke all of us by explaining Etrigan the Demon. And also all things Swamp Thing. It's totally cool to attempt to blow up an entire town by just upping the oxygen count super high and just giving it time. But welcome, Will.
Thank you for having me.
So, Sins Past. How did you hear about this? How did you know about it?
I heard about this from like YouTube, like What Culture What Cult Comics section, where they always do those like 10 things about this certain character, 10 things that like other characters do in comics. And it was one video, I think they titled it Comic Books That Made People Rage Quit.
Yep.
And this sounds about right.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and imagine that the Clone Saga and One More Day were also on that list. But again, not being as well known, because this is in the very middle of J. Michael Straczynski's run, famous for doing like Babylon 5. But anyway, we will get into that later. For now, the rules of the game are that Will is going to be our apt pupil. Today, the instructor is going to be Professor L, who's going to bring us through every bit of this storyline, beginning to end, explaining it along the way. Will has the full permission to stop the entire show at any point to ask whatever question he deems needs answered, which can range all the way from who is that, what's some background, to what the ever-loving fuck, which has been a very popular question on this show thus far.
For good reason, too.
I have to preface though, like you did send me a message before, you sent me the invite saying, I didn't remember which plot this was, and let me say from the bottom of my heart, fuck you.
Yep, I sure did. Oh God, yeah. And for those of you who are surprised, we're gonna just keep the surprise going until the reveal. So, yeah. Professor L, before we begin, by the way, when Will asks the questions, then the other professor, myself, Professor J, then answers those questions, or gets first crack at answering the question, to make me relevant. Leia, just before we get into this, had you ever read this storyline before?
I had not actually read it, but I was aware of it happening. Like I knew the plot beats, but I had never actually sat down and read it start to finish. So this was an experience.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. Well, then let's get into it. The floor is yours, Leia.
All right. Very good. Okay. So Sins Past. All right. So this is a 6-issue arc, so it's not very long. So that it's friendly to readers in that way, at least. It starts up opening on Mary Jane at a theater audition for an off-Broadway play. It looks like she's about to bomb, but she ends up getting the part by relating her lines basically to her feelings about her husband, who is Peter Parker. Peter is very clearly happy in his relationship with Mary Jane. They both seem very happy, and very obviously loves her a great deal.
Wait. They're actually happy?
Yes, they're actually happy.
Spider-Man story. That's not real.
It's only for like 2 pages, so we'll give them that. And so she gets the part in the play, and her obvious joy in that is nearly overwhelming for Peter. It's clear that he cares about her a lot. And so they're celebrating over breakfast, basically. And Aunt May goes to grab the mail, and in the mail is a mysterious letter that appears to be from the somewhat long dead Gwen Stacy, Peter's previous girlfriend. In the letter, Gwen says that she went to France suddenly in between semesters to, quote, figure things out, because she's so scared of telling Peter about something very big that she just wasn't sure how to do. She explains in the letter that she tried to call, but Peter was in Canada for a few weeks on a story with the Bugle, so she sent the letter to Aunt May's house instead, knowing he'd be able to get it there when he returned.
I have a question
yes.
about the letter. Was it to extend her car warranty?
Yes, it was.
They had been looking for him for a very long time.
They had a very important message about his extended warranty. That's it. That's the series. Any questions?
Peter gets it. It's a scam. He puts out $200, and J. Jonah Jameson calls him an idiot and demands more pictures of Spider-Man.
Now you understand why it was so controversial. So before we can find out what the thing that she's talking about in her letter that's such a big deal, it ends unfinished, just by Gwen telling Peter that she's so sorry for what she's about to tell him, and then there's no second page of the letter. It's just a single page. So
ghosted by letter. Got it.
What's
yes,
that?
Ghosted by letter.
Ghosted by letter. So Peter talks to Mary Jane about the letter, and they're trying to puzzle out what in the hell is going on. It wasn't clear in this series how long it had been since Gwen died. It implies that it's been a couple years, so not an overly long time, but not necessarily a recent event either.
This is one of those weird, wibbly wobbly, timey wimey things, because the Clone Saga happened before this, and they had specifically stated that it had been 5 years since the Gwen Stacy Jackal thing. So we can assume, I guess, that it's at least 5 years.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting. It was about like half, not quite a decade, but not just like last month either. So somewhere in between.
Right.
But obviously in the interim, Peter went with second choice MJ, and ended up being great. And there's a lot of weird stuff that's going on in the background here, but we'll talk about that later. So they're trying to figure out what the hell is going on with this letter, and they mentioned that there hadn't been much time between when Gwen arrived back in the United States and when she died. Although Peter says, I can tell that she was upset about something, but she never really told me what it was. As you probably know, Gwen was killed by the Green Goblin. They determined that the letter was definitely written by Gwen, but it wasn't postmarked from France. It was postmarked in New York, and recently, in the letter it says 2004. So it wasn't Gwen who mailed it to Aunt May's house. Peter thinks somebody's trying to fuck with him in his family, which is completely legit. There is a couple pages of exposition here about Peter, about how Peter thinks that Mary Jane deserves better than him because he's still super sad about Gwen dying, and he thinks Mary Jane is essentially a saint for, putting up with his grief and loving him despite it. Jesus fuck, Peter. So he gets up and visits Gwen's grave in the middle of the night because this is a normal thing to do, I guess. He goes to her grave and yes.
Can I ask a question?
You may.
Yep.
I'm sorry, he got into a graveyard in the middle of the night?
Yep.
Yeah, he sure did. He's Spider-Man. It probably wasn't very tough for him to do, but yeah, going to graveyards in the middle of the night is something
only goth kids do.
Yeah, I was just about to say something I used to do in high school, but yes, you nailed it. And I am not Spider-Man.
He's taking a long drag of a clove cigarette.
Pretty much, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I actually had my senior pictures taken in a graveyard.
This is my future.
And I had a black turtleneck. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's a good stuff.
When you feel like you need something slightly choking you with fabric.
Right. Well, that fit with the whole goth thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, he's hanging out at Gwen's grave in the middle of the goddamn night, just monologuing at it about how sad he is that she's gone and what have you. And then about halfway through his sad guy monologue, his spider senses start tingling, and he realizes he's being watched by more than one person. Out of nowhere, two mysterious strangers dressed in all black bodysuits come out of nowhere and just start whooping his ass.
Can I pause for a second here and just
Yes.
state the way you said that? I was just thinking of a song, some romantic evening you will meet a stranger now.
In a graveyard over
In a
your dead
graveyard.
girlfriend. Although I will say that monologuing over a grave makes a lot more sense than monologuing over your comatose aunt in the hospital, like we
Yes.
saw in the Clone Saga.
Yes, this is a
Was it
definite
technically-
monologue improvement for sure.
Is it technically monologuing if you're just talking to a dead body? I mean, it's a one-sided dialogue, isn't it?
Pretty much. Yeah. I mean, it's, she's under the ground. So she's not really, he's just talking at a headstone if you want to get technical about it.
All right.
So these two mysterious strangers in black start just whooping his ass, and they start yelling at him about, how does it feel to be alone and have nobody help, nobody's here to save you, blah blah blah. They're really fast, they're really strong, and he suspects right away that they're humans with some kind of augmentation, and their strength and speed is not normal. So he fights back in self-defense before managing to get away by jumping on the side of a passing truck, because I guess the cemetery was on a shipping route. The next
Pull
day,
off, Catwoman and Batman Returns.
yeah, very much like
Saved
that,
by
actually.
kitty litter. Yeah.
So next day, Mary Jane and Peter continue to try to puzzle out the note, and Mary Jane notices that there's pencil impressions on the back of the page that look like somebody has basically laid another sheet on top of it to write the second page. It took me a little while to understand what this meant, because I have not written a physical letter with my hands in about 20 years.
Right.
Which is, I feel like when was this published, Josh? Do you know offhand?
2004.
2004. Okay, that's what I thought, because it did make the postmark relevant. But even in 2004, were we writing letters in 2004? I feel like we weren't writing letters in 2004.
I mean,
as people,
not without
like,
a pandemic, not without a pandemic involved. I've written a couple of letters, but just for my friends are at home, and so nice to get mail.
Right. And that makes sense.
But other than that, no. Like, definitely not with like a hotel notepad or whatever Gwen's using for this.
Yeah, it's really weird, because I was like, by 2004, like, she should have been just posting this on her live journal. Like,
well, let's crunch the math here. So it's 2004, and by your numbers, Wasta, it's like 5 or 6 years ago.
Right. That's true.
So
but
99, 98.
Right. But the original story happened in 67.
And wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey Marvel time is weird.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's just go with the theory. She's in France. It's really, a cool aesthetic.
It seems like a very French thing to do. She's a snifter of absinthe. She's
in a dark candlelit attic above a bookshop or something.
My dearest Peter.
So she finds out there's like little pencil impressions on the back of the piece of paper where the page 2 had been written but not attached. They're not quite distinct enough to make like a pencil rubbing. And while they're trying to figure out how to get the basically the message that's on the back of the paper off of there and translate it, Aunt May calls him down to breakfast. Yes, she does. She casually mentions that there's another mysterious envelope that was left for Peter at the door. Like, stop answering the door. Stop picking up the mail.
Stop living your life.
Or at least like, if you're getting weird packages and weird envelopes and stuff like that, like, she saw the first one. Like, Aunt May saw the first one. Don't casually be like, oh, by the way, there was an envelope left for you at the door. More pancakes? Like, what is that? It's very strange.
Like 60s to 70s. So she's like, any kind of like handwritten letters. Hello, this is exciting for her.
I used to write letters.
Oh my God.
They don't even teach penmanship in classes anymore.
No one can read.
Shit.
I don't know why we've turned Aunt May into like Miss Havisham.
That's fair. She's a lovely lady. So inside this envelope, there's pictures of Mary Jane and Aunt May interacting with two strangers that have their faces blacked out. And it's accompanied by a note that says, "We can kill them whenever we want." So Peter asked both of them if they've talked to any strangers recently, and both confirmed that they have. And not only did they talk to these strangers, but they freely talked about their family and relationship with them. Peter specifically. This is why I don't talk to people. Like some stranger walks up and is like, "Hey, let me help you with those groceries." So
like stranger danger.
Yeah. Who do you live with? What are their names? How long have you been with them? Okay, cool. All right. And what's their social security number? Credit card information, expiration date, and security code. All right, cool. Thanks, neighbor.
Mother's maiden name by chance?
Right.
What's your dog's name?
Although real quick, because I will forget it by the end of this show. I used to have a job in which I worked for a teleconferencing company. So we had thousands of phone numbers, and one of them was one digit off from like your pharmacy line, like whatever, dial a pharmacy. And people who were very, very aged, like very old, would call, misdial the number, and I would pick up and actually say, conferencing center. They wouldn't say hello or anything. They would just start telling me their social security number. Question that they're asked. And I'd have to be like, ma'am, this is not, no, stop that.
Yeah. I worked at a similar place that had a very similar system, because I worked for a college where the student ID number was your social security number, and it was that way for many, many, many years. So I would pick up the phone and people would just start rattling off their social security number before ever saying a word to me.
Right.
That's a big old yikes there.
Yeah. They discontinued that practice while I was still working for the place, but for like literally since the college started in like the 60s, and was founded in like the early 60s up until about 2000 or so was when they used the social security number. So yeah, really safe.
So yes, Aunt May's old.
Mary Jane should know Aunt May is old. There's a lot going on. But yeah, they've been talking to strangers about Peter, just real casually. So it just kind of cuts to Peter seeking the help of a detective named Lamont, and he tasks him with extracting the message that's written on the reverse of the letter, which has been very weird setup. He has webbed the part that has writing on it face down to a piece of steel so that the front part can't be read. This isn't how criminal data analysis works, like, at all. Sure, comics.
Yep.
So is this technically forensic handwriting analysis to the rescue here?
So what I'm gathering, and they didn't go into it, and I'm glad they didn't. They didn't go into it, but it seemed to be that they gave it to quote unquote a forensics lab for quote unquote analysis, wherein they are, I guess, using some kind of technology to read the impressions without doing like a rubbing of them or something. It is never fully explained what procedure they're using for this, and that's good, because it would have pissed me off. For listeners who do not know me, I have a background in anthropology, taphonomy, and death investigation, and I worked for a law enforcement academy for several years. So I see things like this, and I immediately am like Captain Buzzkill. Right. I'm like, that's not how it works. So the guy also asks the forensic lab to take exactly one strand of the webbing and run a complete chemical analysis on it, just in case.
Right. Which, yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's good cop.
Yeah. I can't fault that. Procedure. However, this is never, at least in this story arc anyway, nothing ever comes of this. Like, right. Nothing happens. It just is dropped there. So, okay.
It sounds like that's something that might play later in the Straczynski run.
Right. Well, yes, because Straczynski's run was 6 years.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is smack dab in the middle of it. So, yeah. The other thing that wasn't mentioned is that for some reason, Lamont, this detective looks a lot like Robert Redford.
Oh, you know what? I didn't really pick up on that, but you're right. Now that I'm thinking about it, yeah, he does inexplicably look a lot like Robert Redford.
Like I'm reading it in for the first time in a long time, and I'm like, is that Robert Redford? Like,
it's real damn close.
Is that Sneakers star Robert Redford?
Yes, that's exactly the first movie I would have thought of when I thought Robert Redford.
Absolutely.
What the fuck? were a detective before you started the Civil War? Or not the Civil War, you were involved in the Winter Soldier program? What the hell?
Yeah, he's a busy man.
Don't bring up Winter Soldier. We'll be here all day. So let's.
Yeah, you don't want to get me started. Spider-Man. Focus on Spider-Man. Okay.
Get rid of your erection. I mean, what?
Leave my personal life out of this.
So they can kill them whenever they want.
Right. They're like, we can kill your family.
Yeah. So meanwhile, Aunt May is at some broad named Anna's house, just kicking it and knitting.
Wait,
well,
I know who that is from the animated series.
Yes, that is. Anna. Yes, Aunt Anna. It's Mary Jane's aunt.
Oh, okay. At no
she
point
was the
did
person
they say...
that put her on the plane in the Clone Saga.
Oh, she looks really different in this one. That's probably what, because I was like, who the hell is this person?
Yes.
Like, she's mentioned for one page and never appears or disappears again. Like, that's it. So yeah, I guess that makes sense. All right. So she's at her aunt Anna's house, and there's a spectacular scene where Spider-Man uses his Nokia brick phone to call Anna's house. Like, it literally has like the Nokia logo on it and everything. Like it's like I've not seen product placement that blatant in some time.
Watch the Justice League cut. The new cut.
No thanks.
Every car is a Mercedes. Everyone can afford a Mercedes. All are Mercedes.
This call brought to you by Nokia.
Pretty much. But yeah, so he takes out his brick phone to call Anna's house. And
Anna's landline.
What's that?
Anna's landline.
Oh yes, her landline. And so you kind of get this juxtaposition where Aunt May is clearly just fine. She's literally just sitting on a couch knitting, being old, and Anna's bringing in some tea and cakes and whatnot, I guess, as old ladies do. And the line is actually being tapped by a fake phone repairman whose face we don't see. So the phone at Anna's doesn't actually ring, and instead Peter is connected to one of the mysterious attackers, who tells him that they've kidnapped May and he has to come to an address all the way across town in 10 minutes or she dies. Although it is very clear in the panels that they don't actually have May.
Hold up. 10 minutes across town in New York in this traffic?
Yes. So understandably, Peter just beats feet and he is swinging frantically across the entire city to get to this abandoned warehouse and manages to make it. So, comics. And he doesn't have time to use the door, so he just straight up busts through a window, which is fortunate because it happens to be the exact room where a tied up Aunt May is being held, except it's not Aunt May. It's really just a mannequin. And it's holding a sign that says boom, and a bomb is strapped to its lap. It's got 5 seconds left on it.
Someone set him up the bomb.
They did.
Is the major villain the Joker? Is this a crossover event?
I had that moment too, I'm not gonna lie. So Peter manages to get away from the immediate blast area, but ends up like half blown up anyways. But he's Spider-Man, so he's fine, just dazed. And then the jerks in black show back up again, taunting him and asking him how it feels to be abandoned and alone, and making him feel bad about himself. And the guy starts kicking his ass again. Peter's super confused by why this is happening. And then the woman in black calls the guy in black Gabriel and tells him to stop killing Peter. Like, now's not the time. We gotta wait. And he calls her Sarah and reluctantly agrees to lay off, but not before threatening Peter and telling him that they're going to kill him after they completely destroy his life because he totally deserves it. After this, Peter falls unconscious. There is a flashback to a scene in the Osborn house where Gwen is telling Peter that Harry has overdosed on LSD, which, okay.
Yep.
All right.
I didn't know that LSD was a big thing in 98 and 99.
And
that was only a 70s thing.
Well, it was in the 60s, though, or the 70s, 60s.
Blended timeline. Gotcha.
People were just injecting that LSD like crazy. Like real gangbusters. Norman doesn't want to take him to a hospital because scandal or something. And apparently Mary Jane and Gwen have been taking care of him as he quote unquote slips in and out of consciousness. Okay, that's not how LSD works. Right. But sure.
No, you sit in your room just staring at your
balls.
staring at your Neo Geo save screen going, I'm a shroom.
Yeah, but apparently LSD, there's also a mention too that the LSD may have been laced with strychnine.
Oh my god.
But
you're not going to get many repeat customers there.
Exactly. Like, I get that, like, yeah, all right, like, drugs are bad, but like, make it a real drug. This isn't a thing. This isn't a thing that people are gonna sell or take. Or much less overdose on, and especially not in the way they're describing. It's inconsistent completely. But comics, drugs are bad. Don't do drugs.
I noticed that I put all of this LSD on these strips of paper, but the paper didn't look white enough, so I threw some bleach on there.
Right.
Oh no.
It was just real fucking, oh god. Apparently, and like I need to point out too, I don't know a ton about like the street drugs, but I can tell you that this isn't a real thing that happens. So Mary Jane and Gwen have been taking care of Harry Osborn as he is having just the worst trip of his life. Peter remarks offhand to Gwen that Norman's been acting real weird over the past month or so. But Gwen interrupts to give what I like to call a big red flag line of questioning about whether or not Peter loves her and would he love her no matter what. And what if I did something really horrible or whatever? And Peter's like, yeah, baby, of course I love you. And at that point, Mary Jane reappears and kind of interrupts the conversation. They all walk off, only to flash forward to Gwen dying again in this like little coma dream that Peter's having.
He dreams about her dying a lot.
Yeah, he does. I mean, like I get that this is a traumatic and significant event, but yeah, it's a lot.
I'm wondering if there's an aspect of his memory where Uncle Ben's hanging out and he's like, "What the fuck am I, chap liver?"
Right, he doesn't flash back to Ben as nearly as much, it seems.
For that, see the Clone Saga.
Yeah, this is very true. So Peter wakes up to find himself in the ruins of the exploded building. So naturally, he just walks it off and goes to see Detective Lamont to find out what the forensic lab was able to extract from the letter.
Wait, a giant building gets blown up and no law enforcement or firefighters are there to like assist him or be like, dude, what the fuck happened here?
No, it just explodes and then Peter's like, well, gotta go catch up with the detective.
Yep. At least I didn't wake up in an incinerator this time.
He just like walks it off, but he shows up to talk to this detective guy just in his like shredded costume. The mask is intact, I guess, which is the important part. But yeah, he clearly has had a bad day. So this is a bad day.
Which Lamont is like very almost unfazed by.
Yeah, he's just real casual. He's like, oh, looks like you got into some trouble, buddy. Anyways, I got the results. Like, it's just
rough day. Yeah.
Totally unconcerned. So Lamont confirms, he's like, yeah, we got some results off this. Here you go. And this is the big reveal. And we get some incomplete sentences. The most important one is, I should have told you when I found out I was pregnant. And then the babies came a month early. I have 2 children, a boy and a girl, Gabriel and Sarah. Whoa, weren't those the names of those Jags who kicked his ass the other day? Wild.
Familiar.
So Peter's even more confused at this point because these are clearly adults and not like toddlers.
Right.
So he goes back home and Mary Jane can tell that there's something wrong. She kind of drags it out of him and decides to do her like own side investigation.
Detective Mary Jane. That's a comic.
Detective Mary Jane. So she decides to look at some stuff herself. In the meantime, Peter goes back to Gwen's grave to dramatically shove a long metal rod into it while crying out. I'd like to point out here, as a person who has been trained in taphonomy and death investigation, that there are a lot better and less weird ways to extract DNA from a person who's deceased, but I guess they don't cover that in photography school or wherever Peter went to get his science information from. This is I've trained in forensic anthropology. I have never seen anybody do this to get DNA ever. It's not a thing. It looked like just like a pole, like a random pole he picked up off the ground. It was like, I'll just shove that in there, like get some goo from her corpse.
Just poka.
Yeah, it was very weird. Very weird. I had to read that panel, that series of panels, like 5 times to try to understand what in the absolute piss he was doing.
Well, I mean, they didn't show the part where he then put the hose in and siphoned out what he needed.
Yeah.
Or whatever he was doing. But you know what? Out of all of this, as we'll find out soon, not the grossest thing in this series.
No, it's not. It was just very confusing because then there's cross contamination. I'm sure he didn't have like any kind of sterilized collecting equipment. I could go on for hours. We're not talking about forensics.
He's a scientist, right?
He is a scientist. He should know better. There's a lot of things wrong with his methodology here, but it doesn't matter. He's having like this is it's just so melodramatic that it's hard not to laugh while reading it.
Yes,
I have to say, with the way you described it, he takes a pole and then he shoves it into the ground where her grave is. That would be a lot of like nice paperwork Freud could write a dissertation on, some kind of pseudo-sexual.
Yeah, you're right. I didn't even think about that, but yeah, there's a lot going on there aside from his terrible methodology. It's just so strange. Like he could have taken any other, like a hair from a hairbrush would have been fine.
Yeah.
That would have been easier, and it wouldn't have been as dramatic, I guess. These comics.
The disturbance of a grave,
like he's constantly at Gwen's grave during this entire arc. Like he just hangs out there all the time.
Yep.
He's got fast travel enabled for this.
Yes. That's where he's placed his hearthstone on Gwen's grave.
Got fast travel as long as enemies are not nearby. Got it.
That's right. Although enemies are almost always nearby when he's there, but
So anyways, while he's doing all this melodramatic, very bad data collection, DNA collection, Gabe and Sarah are watching him at a distance be weird at the grave.
Yes.
They're just like, what's this guy doing? And they're like, oh, he's soon going to find out, the truth or whatever.
Wait, he's being watched?
They're being watched. Or
he's
being watched by Gabe and Sarah.
But apparently not close enough that his spider sense goes off.
That's what I'm thinking. It's like, how does his fucking spider sense not go off? Especially if these are people with like ill intent to harm him. Like, what the fuck?
There's a couple panels where it's shown that they're like looking through binoculars, so it's implied that they're pretty far off.
Okay, I'm going to see them if they're not like immediately close to him and trying to shoot him or stab him. It doesn't go off.
No, yeah,
right. Like we've seen that his spider sense will go off if there's like a sniper rifle on him.
Yeah, thank you. One more day.
Next time.
Hooray. So meanwhile, back at the ranch, Mary Jane peels the letter off of the webbed up piece of steel that Peter has affixed it to and takes it. As she's doing that,
is it dripping with goo?
No.
All I'm thinking
really.
is Ghostbusters 2. Why am I dripping with goo?
And then Peter is analyzing DNA in, I guess, his spider cave. It's not clear where he's at. He just has this DNA analyzer just kind of sitting around in a building.
He has broken into some building.
Okay.
Because
comics.
It is mentioned that there are several places that he could break into, but he chose this one.
Yeah, like in the story, they don't show it at all. All of a sudden, he's just sitting in front of a DNA analyzer.
Right.
It's like, okay, we had to get to this point. So he's comparing the Rod DNA to the DNA that's left on the glue in the letter, which I also want to point out is a real rookie ass mistake if you're trying to do crimes.
Rod DNA, by the way, being the name of my Rod Stewart covered band.
Thank you. I was waiting for that to happen at least once during this podcast. So somebody, one of these ding dongs licked the seal on a letter, and that's how he got the DNA off of it. Which, I mean, again, not the slickest criminals in the book, but comics. While he is in the process of analyzing this DNA, the woman in black, in the black bodysuit, shows up again, explains very patiently that she has to kill him because he's done something so terrible that it's the only option. And if her brother gets a hold of him, he'll kill everybody. He'll kill May and Mary Jane too. So if she just takes the initiative and kills Peter only, then he'll stop and the other two will be safe. Peter isn't down with this, obviously, and they fight. And during the fight, Peter manages to pull off her mask, and surprise, she is the spitting image of Gwen. As he is stunned by this, the window nearby explodes, and when he looks up, Sarah has vanished. So then he just calmly walks over to the DNA analyzer, which is apparently made like a little ding noise to let you know that the toast is done.
Fries are up.
And it does confirm that yes, they are in fact Gwen's kids. So then we cut to a random rooftop again, where the kids are hanging out, talking about how Peter must know now that he's their father, that deserted their mother and caused her death, and that's why they want to kill him. They believe that Peter Parker is / Spider-Man is their father, and abandoned them. Peter returns.
Big if true.
Yeah. Okay. So Peter returns home where he's confronted by Mary Jane, who confesses that she knows everything. Peter is like, Maury said they ain't my kids, and Mary Jane is like, I know, baby. I know you never fucked her, but I know who the real daddy is. Turns out MJ knew all along that Gwen had gotten pregnant, but she kept it from Peter because Gwen asked her not to tell him, and she's a good friend.
I seriously want to like intercut here of Sally Field from Mrs. Doubtfire just saying the whole time, multiple times now.
The whole time?
The whole time?
Yes. I mean, and another part of this is, keep in mind, this is Peter and Mary Jane are married at this point in the comics history.
And from my understanding here, Marvel wanted Mary Jane to get back with Peter, and that's what Straczynski's major thing was her being in LA, and then eventually she comes back to New York to reconcile like their separation, from my understanding.
Oh yeah. For more on this, tune in to the next episode when we talk about One More Day and what Marvel wanted. Specifically what Joe fucking Quesada wanted. But that's a rant for another time.
Yeah, it's a rant for next week. So Mary Jane knew all along, but never told Peter because she was afraid that it would destroy Peter's memory of Gwen and give him even more to grieve over. And so basically she explains that it turns out they were attending to a LSD overdosed Harry Osborn.
As you do in college.
Yeah, as you do in college. Gwen had slipped away to talk to Norman. And MJ kind of peeps on him, arguing about how Norman will never get his hands on them, and starts to expose Norman unless he gets Harry medical care. Norman fires back that those children are mine, not yours, and starts ranting about how Harry's a real piece of shit who doesn't deserve to be his heir. He needs new heirs, and these kids are it. Gwen says that she'd rather die before she lets Norman get his hands on their children, and Norman is like, all right, hey, thanks for the tip, excellent, as you wish.
Wait,
let me just add that to my to-do.
Right. So Gwen tries to tell Peter.
Hold on. What?
Yeah.
What's that, Will?
Was this that can be arranged or?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wink
yeah.
shit.
Yeah. Like he like looks directly into the panel, like the camera, and is like, yeah, right.
Yeah. That's John.
So Gwen threatens to tell Peter to come clean to Peter, and allow him to raise the kids as his. It's interesting to note here that Peter again has no knowledge that these kids even exist, so this is like a big ask, but it's fine. Gwen also casually asks about, hey, what's up with these kids anyways? They were born 2 months early, even though she said in her letter they were born 1 month early.
Right.
But okay. And they've aged 9 months and just 7. Norman claims that Osborn blood is quote unquote special, and that's that on that. Gwen walks out to find Mary Jane peeping, and instead of yelling at her, just gives her a dramatic hug. And turns out Gwen one day just got horny for Norman, and it just happened, according to her. I mean, who amongst us hasn't fucked our friends' dads?
Part of this is also that he was so sad and vulnerable at one point, and she was working for him at the time.
Yeah, and basically she's like, well, I felt bad for him, but also he was like really magnetic, and also he was a little sad, and also, but like, it's still your friend's dad.
Right.
I'm sorry, was this was this script cut from a porno?
You would think, like, reading this, I was like, wow, okay, so like she just, it sounds like she just had this really impulse decision to fuck her friend's dad,
Yes.
essentially.
And in fact, she was still a virgin when she did so give her virginity to her friend's dad.
Yes.
Okay.
Her and Peter had never ever gotten together.
Yeah.
They're in college. They never had sex.
Nope.
So, comics.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm really mad at the writer right now because this just sounds like old man wish fulfillment right here.
Yes,
Yeah, it very much is.
We will get to Straczynski and his level of responsibility for this after we get through, because I got notes.
Okay, because my brain just thinking, I'm crunching the math right now, is like she's either 18 to 21 and Norman's either like if he's having a kid at 20 or 25, he's either in the 40 to 50 range.
Right. Yep.
And I'm not being ageist here, but it just seems like,
no, it's creepy as fuck.
There's definitely a power imbalance there that is that's very concerning.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But yeah, so she just decides to fuck her friend's dad. I really just keep saying that over and over again because that's what's happening.
That is in fact what's happening. Because most people, you explain, at least up to this point, the story, and they're like, oh, okay, if Gwen had kids and they're Normans, then there was an assault or there was something else going on. Nope.
No, this was consensual.
I'm going to assume here that she did not know he was the Green Goblin.
No, yeah, she did not know that. So she fucked her friend's dad, and she says, quote unquote, the next thing I knew I was pregnant, which again is really not how pregnancy works either. But all right.
Condoms, how do they work?
Yeah, like I don't, girl, get it together. You're out there fucking your friend's dad without any type of contraception. I don't get it together.
Got like Green Goblin serum like running through his
Yes.
That's exactly what's happening.
There is in fact basically goblin sperm. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So Peter kind of comes to the conclusion that the reason the kids are growing so fast is due to Norman's like goblin DNA that he's augmented basically with his goblin serum. And this is the true reason why the Green Goblin killed Gwen. It was that he was targeting her specifically, and also Peter, but mostly Gwen instead of the other way around. So he learns that he comes to the conclusion that Norman has raised the kids to hate them and train them to kill him, because I guess Peter was the son that he'd always wanted to have, and he didn't have because he had Harry instead.
That's a big theme between Norman and Peter. Yep. Yeah.
This is I think this is maybe the first one where I've seen that it's explicitly stated in exactly those words.
Yeah. I'm something of a scientist myself.
Yeah, that's it. That's the show, everyone.
By the way, fucked your girlfriend.
William Dafoe comes out of big grin.
Jet from evil.
All right, so I did see some panels from this comic, and why does Norman Osborn look like Tommy Lee Jones?
I don't know. I think so. I've noticed. I was actually having a conversation about this with one of my friends not too long ago about how, especially recently, like if you read comics that have been published within like maybe the past 10-ish years or so, maybe a little longer. I'll push it back even to like 15 years. A lot of times it seems like the artists just give up and draw the actor that's either an actor that's popular at the time for their character model, or in the case of Marvel, I've seen it distinctly where people just give up and stop drawing, like for example Loki, and start drawing Tom Hiddleston.
Yeah.
So but I feel like I've seen that a lot where it's like a hot actor or well-known actor is kind of the character model for that. But yeah, he does look like Tommy Lee Jones. Tommy Lee Jones was pretty big back then, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Like he was a pretty
2004. Yeah. I mean, it was Men in Black movies big. Yeah.
So it would track.
And also, Samuel Jackson was getting, honestly, Marvel should have been paying him some kind of royalties for the way they were rendering Nick Fury in the Ultimate Universe.
Well, yeah, there's a whole story on that one.
Yeah, there's a whole story on that. We won't get into that here, but there is a very good reason for that, and it's actually pretty cool. Okay, so he comes to the conclusion that that Norman just really essentially wants to destroy him because he's upset that Peter is not his son. It's at this point that there is an entire 5 pages devoted to an extremely melodramatic moment where Peter
throws a tantrum.
So like he throws a tantrum, but like at no point. So this happens. All this information starts coming out, and again, much like Josh said earlier, he's not immediately concerned that maybe she's been assaulted. What he is concerned with and throws a 5-page long tantrum over is the fact that Gwen lost her virginity to Norman instead of him. And at one point literally does this very Star Trek-esque like, Khan, except it's Osborne instead.
Yeah, it's a pretty horrible panel.
Yeah.
So Peter's just trying to, he's upset that he didn't get to have sex with her first?
Yes. It's 5 pages of him literally just destroying furniture in his home in front of his wife, I need to add here. That he didn't get to fuck his ex-girlfriend before his ex-girlfriend fucked her friend's dad.
Yep.
Yeah.
This was very, very difficult for me to stomach. I couldn't take it seriously, and it was also very gross.
Well,
that's it, everybody.
Boyfriend,
that's the title.
So Mary Jane is like, "Oh, stop, baby, I still love you," and that's that on that. And we just kind of cut to Peter just kind of collapsing into Mary Jane's arms, who I guess is good enough for now.
Right.
I really do not like the way she is treated by Peter in this. So the next morning, Mary Jane and Peter are sitting around discussing kids. And again, he understands that they're aging at twice the normal rate, and therefore they're also rapidly dying. Good guy Peter decides that he needs to help save them, even though they're actively trying to kill him. So in a really bizarre move, he decides to call a press conference to tell Gabe and Sarah to meet him at the spot where he saw their mother for the last time, and then just dips out of the press conference. This is a really dingus move because everybody in the press immediately follows him to find out where the fuck he's going. And of course, he's going to the top of the bridge where Gwen was killed.
Also, I'm sorry, I have to. So, the last time that he had saw her, that's a real ambiguous statement. So it's either the bridge or it's the graveyard.
Yeah, that's
or possibly Shea Stadium where her clone was.
Yeah.
God damn it.
Fucking clones.
Clones. I fucking hate clones.
Goddamn, like other alternate dimension Gwen Stacy's. Like, which ones we talked about here?
Yeah, it is pretty ambiguous, but I guess he just decides that telling literally everyone in New York to do this on television is the correct way to do it. So of course, the twins show up at the correct place, and the media is below filming. They can't make out what's being said, but they've got cameras on them. Peter explains to the kids he's not their dad. He knows they're dying, and he knows that Norman has brainwashed them into hating him for something that he didn't do. So Sarah, who seems to be the smarter of the two, realizes that Peter never tested his DNA against theirs, just their mom's, because he knew he couldn't possibly have been the father, since Gwen and Peter never had sex. Peter tells Gabriel that Norman, who raised them, killed Gwen and not Spider-Man. Gabe does not handle this well and tries to kick Peter's ass again. The cops are here. They have arrived. They are shooting at Peter and Gabe. Gabe whips out a gun and tries to take a shot at Peter, but the cops are like, yeehaw, time to shoot indiscriminately at the top of this bridge. And Sarah gets shot instead. She starts to fall off the bridge just like her mom did, and Peter manages to save her while talking about how he won't fail Gwen again. This is deeply creepy.
This whole thing is just deeply creepy and gross.
Yeah. Like, it's very, there's a lot. Like, he's talking to this child, essentially, like she's Gwen during this incident. It's very strange.
Yeah. Can I just make an observation here?
Yes.
So physically, they're like in their 20s, right? Or 30s?
They appear to be, like ambiguously around Peter's age-ish.
Okay.
They're not like teens or anything.
So mentally, would they be like the equivalent of a 6-year-old, I guess? Kind of like Charlize Theron in Arrested Development?
You'd think so, but no, it is actually explained that because of this rapid growth, their minds essentially were mental development was accelerated along with their physical development. So yeah, it's not like murderous toddlers.
Right. And Norman, in fact, got them the best tutors and teachers in France, specifically because he realized this.
Yeah.
Well, the reason I'm asking here, it just sounds like Gabe is not emotionally stable.
This is very true. But we will get it to that in just a moment. So Peter does manage to save Sarah and takes her to a hospital. Meanwhile, Gabe has just like fallen in the water under the bridge and then somehow makes his way to, I guess, the sewers ? To go to this place that Norman had instructed them to go after Peter had died, after they had killed Peter. He manages to get inside, and inside are matching male and female Green Goblin costumes, and Gabe howls a dramatic "No!"
Oh no.
Yeah.
Full on Vader no. Yep.
Yeah. A video of Norman starts playing. It's one of those, if you're seeing this, I'm dead and we won messages. And he explains that they're basically to carry on his legacy as the Green Goblins now. Meanwhile, pretty much.
He's also been like, yes, so you followed my instructions and have then killed Peter Parker and Spider-Man at this point.
Yeah. There's a lot of monologuing going on here too. Back at the hospital, Peter's waiting for Sarah, who's in surgery, and Mary Jane shows up to basically give him moral support. You did your best, it's going to be fine. But then the doctor comes out and informs them that Sarah's lost a lot of blood and is rejecting transfusions because of weird DNA. The doctor's like, sucks to be her. There's nothing we could do. Too bad. So sad. And Peter, who happens to know Gwen's blood type because these are things I guess you just ask people, offers to give Sarah a transfusion of his own blood. And he does. And because he has weird...
Do they even confirm his blood type?
They don't say anything about his blood type. They were just like, oh, I guess, sure, Spider-Man. Yeah.
That's not how blood transfusions work.
That is definitely not how blood transfusions work. But as we have also already seen here, they are very weak on actual science for somebody who is essentially a scientist. Definitely comic book science for sure.
Peter Parker's the scientist. He's got this figured out. Yeah, the altered DNA will work.
So yeah, basically Peter's logic here is that like I also have weird DNA, so like maybe my blood will work.
Maybe
we'll give it a shot. And so he does. And the transfusion is successful and it stabilizes her, but it does significantly weaken him because they have to take like a lot of blood from him, they tell him. Meanwhile, in the sewers, Gabe is getting instructed by Video Norman to inject himself with some extra Green Goblin serum so that his aging will stop and his powers will be even greater than Norman's were. So basically it's kind of like an antidote to their rapid aging, I guess. Ish. It'll also shatter his mind, but hey, totally worth it, right?
That sounds like one of those depression like medication commercials where side effects might include.
Side effects may include just, you get tons of powers, but you'll also be really mentally broken. So that's the trade-off.
But might have a complete and utter psychological break. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So he's like, yeah, sounds good. And he does. We cut back to Spider-Man, who is in the hospital after the blood transfusion. He is weakened and trying to recover. But oh no, outside the window. Outside the window, it's the green goddamn goblin on his little hoverboard thing. He crashes through the window of the hospital, grabs Peter, and then they scoot right back out, and he's angrily lecturing Peter about how he shouldn't have given his sister his weak blood. Peter manages to use the last of his strength to shoot a web and hold on, depositing them atop a random building somewhere, where Gabe Goblin monologues at him crazily for a while until Sarah shows back up again. She proclaims Peter's innocence, and Gabe Goblin does not take this well and tries to kill them both. But Sarah manages to get a shot off that explodes the hoverboard thing, and he falls into the river, presumed dead again. Sarah then is like, I gotta go, and just leaves. And then Peter falls unconscious again. There's another flashback to him and Gwen. So this is like what, the third or fourth time this has happened.
Yep.
Where he is in this flashback, he is professing his eternal love to Gwen, and when he wakes up from his little coma dream, he is saying it to MJ, who's like, oh, just hang in there and rest. Meanwhile, Gabe washes up on a beach and is found by a beach going family who are just trying to have a nice time. They ask him who he is, and he's like, I don't know. And that's it. That's the story. It just closes on that.
No. That's not how you close.
It is.
Bad guy amnesia.
It is. He now has. He's a super augmented, super psychotic person who has no memory of his prior weird life of being a rapidly aging child who was trained to be an assassin to kill Spider-Man and also the Green Goblin.
Okay, retrospective. And look back on it now. Maybe amnesia is the best idea for this guy. Just start off clean slate.
It's the best choice for all of us after reading this story, honestly.
Right?
We're gonna have to steal one of those memory erasers from Tommy Lee Jones right now.
Flashing thing.
MIB thumbs.
So yes.
Now let's forget about it.
So that's it. That's the miniseries. Please feel free to ask any additional questions you may have after hearing that play-by-play.
Okay. I'm not sure Straczynski was trying to create new villains here or new characters for Peter Parker to bounce off of with Sarah and the whole Gabe. What kind of goblin was he? Green or gray?
Okay.
Gray?
So
Was he just doing a character unintentionally doing a character assassination of Gwen Stacy?
Okay, that's not how all this started. So, so how this started was Straczynski basically got direction from then editor-in-chief Joe Quesada. And this is going to dive into a lot of why Spider-Man fans fucking hate Joe Quesada. So Joe Quesada said, okay, we're going to have this story and it's going to, here's the Barris sketch. And J. Michael Straczynski was like, oh, no, that's a great idea. So what we're going to do is it will be Peter's kids. And, she's not going to fuck Norman Osborn for no reason. But that's why she went to Paris and she had the kids and they are rapidly growing due to radioactive nonsense. Or actually, at that point, totem nonsense, because Straczynski had already written this whole series about how it wasn't the radioactive spider, it was the fact that the spider was a very specific form of spider that ancient civilizations had used to grant them spider powers. Mm-hmm. It was weird, but actually it was much better than this. So that was the original plan. Quesada hated that because the goal in Quesada and all these other editors' minds was to make Peter somehow younger and more relatable, and him having kids would mean that was not...
That he's getting older.
Right. He wouldn't be relatable. See also why One More Day happened, which we'll get into next time, because being married means you're too old to be relatable.
I guess I'm old too. Okay.
Well, yeah, I'm double old.
I'm forever young.
Yeah.
That's right, everyone. I'm single.
So that is how that whole thing happened. Straczynski, who honestly is a brilliant writer. If you've ever seen Babylon 5, he knows how to do a long story. He knows how to do all of those things. His biggest missteps were basically demanded by Joe Quesada. So they had a brilliant writer who they were hoping could make horrible ideas work, and he made them palatable at least. Some of the discussions that happened in this between Peter and Mary Jane are amongst my favorites. As Leia pointed out, he's a fuckboy to her, going through his trauma, but she is very accepting, and the dialogue that happens between them when he's not just being a selfish dickbag is very, very good. It's very stable, and it's a good example of a great marriage when...
Yeah, that was one of the things that really struck me while I was reading this, is they do have a good relationship. They do clearly love each other and they do clearly care about each other. And I understand that Peter's grief at losing Gwen, how it happened and why it happened is definitely a significant trauma, and it's definitely going to impact his character, and I got no quarrel with that. I also don't really have a quarrel with him being kind of hung up about the fact that, basically his ex-girlfriend died essentially on his watch. Right. Whatever you may take that to mean. I do not like the way that it was written in this story. Is it basically starts off with Peter and Mary Jane are deeply in love. They have a great, healthy relationship, but also he's so hung up on his ex-girlfriend that he's kind of a dick to Mary Jane by being so hung up on his dead ex-girlfriend.
Right.
And how how can Mary Jane compete with the memory of Gwen Stacy?
Exactly. Right. That's exactly it. It's like it kind of puts you in this weird position where it's like, okay, I understand all of this, and it is like to some degree relatable. Like I get how we're all there, but at the same time, it sort of allows Peter to just be like, oh, like it almost like he never actually comes out and says it, but you just get the distinct impression that like I only married you because Gwen's dead. Like what the fuck? So yeah, I just thought that was a interesting part of this storyline, interesting piece of writing. But yeah, continue.
So, Will, other questions?
Well, I did a little research on Straczynski and like him writing Babylon 5, and like he's got these other shows like Sense8. I've watched.
Yeah, Sense8's great.
And other things he's done was Changeling, Ninja Assassin. He was one of the key writers for Thor, the 2011 one, Underworld Awakening, and World War Z. So I'm going to assume that the major turning points here in these writings with Spider-Man is just because of Quesada. Is that we can make?
That is what many Spider-Man fans end up at. Straczynski himself is pretty much laid it all out and been like, here's the whole process for the 6 years I was there. And he's like, because he also wrote One More Day, which we'll go over next. But Quesada basically assigned him that as his swan song after a 6-year comic book run, that you get to do this after you've already done Sins Past. So we'll get into that more on our next show. But yes, as I understand it, the worst parts of what was happening with Straczynski were dictated by Joe Quesada.
Okay. And I did a little research about like the sequel to Sins Past. Apparently it was in Spectacular Spider-Man, and it's called Sins Remembered. And from what I'm reading here, Sarah comes back. She's trying to work with Interpol. Gabriel's there. And at one point in time, Peter kisses Sarah.
Nope, don't know anything about that. So tell you what, if you're interested in that one, you throw it at us next season if there is one. If we haven't just fucking killed ourselves.
Oh, that sounds horrible. Yeah, well, let's do it.
That sounds like a lot of moral ambiguity there. It's like, hey, maybe you shouldn't make out with the daughter of your dead ex-girlfriend. I'm just gonna put that out there, guy.
Well, I mean, Cap did it.
It's true.
He sets these examples. We just follow them.
Karen Carter and Peggy Carter have so much in common now, don't they? Hey, oh, this is awkward.
Forever salty. We'll forever be salty about that.
All right. Well, any other thoughts or comments on Sins Past?
God, it wasn't as bad as the Clone Saga. I'll put that out there. It was not nearly as bad as the Clone Saga. Maybe it was because it was only 6 issues.
It's funny because there was a few top 10 lists that I looked at of basically like what are considered the worst Spider-Man storylines of his entire run. And consistently, Clone Saga and Sins Past are like competing for the number 1 and 2 slot. With every once in a while, One More Day in there, but mostly people really hate. If they know about this, they hate it.
Yep.
Yeah, that's legit.
I did a little research about like them trying to retcon this, and apparently they did not retcon this.
No, Straczynski wanted to retcon it through One More Day. He's like, okay, if I already have to do this thing, at least let me get rid of that thing. And they were like, yeah, Quesada was like, no, eat shit. Yeah.
Just fuck you, Quesada. That's all I gotta say, man.
Yep. Welcome to where most Spider-Man fans are.
I'm going to. I have to consider getting a membership though for Marvel Unlimited, and just check out this entire run of Straczynski, just to see some things that were golden nuggets. Because I do have at least volume 2 of his run, Revelations, where Aunt May figures out that he's actually Spider-Man.
Yeah,
and she starts like unsubscribing the Daily Bugle because like it's very unbiased in the reporting of reporting Spider-Man and all this stuff, and I'm like, that's cool.
He does a lot that's very good. If people like especially Spider-Verse stuff, Spider-Verse stuff starts with the beginning of Straczynski's run.
Yeah,
that's what introduces Morlun and his weird ass family who feed on spider totems. High recommend for Straczynski's stuff in general. Not necessarily for this storyline or One More Day, which we'll get into.
Yeah. I'm glad I'm not on that one.
Hey, I get to go over that one with my wife.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I get to answer her questions.
Well, Will, thank you for joining us again. This has been a blast.
Yes, absolute pleasure.
You made this at least somewhat palatable.
Oh, yeah. All right.
And so absolutely. As mentioned, Will, do you have anything you need to plug? You have any projects? No?
I'm just on Facebook and on Twitter. I normally just talk about nerdy shit. Or sometimes I send Wasta like, hey, check out this new Rogue figure or something like that.
That's right. Yep. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, and everyone tune in next time when we're going to finish our three-peat, where we go with One More Day, the other Straczynski plot that is universally panned.
Pray for Mojo.
We'll see you then. Just a quick little credit. Our theme is done by Jared Adam of the wonderful band Vandello, who we love very much at Graphically Novel. But until next time, we'll see ya.
Little wreck conversation, some deep reactions, please. All this comics narration ain't late me. A little more talk, a lot less read. A little fight, baby, is what I need. Close the trade, open up your brains. Explain it to me. Explain it to me, baby. Explain it to me. Explain it to me, baby. Explain it to me. Vandello 2021.